Hi, my name is Rachel Ballantyne, and this is my SLP 242 therapy project for Module 5. For this project, I chose to do comparing and contrasting, and my target group is 7th grade. Comparing and contrasting is an important skill in all academics, not just reading and writing. Teachers may ask the students to compare two books that they've read, characters in a book that they're reading, two different wars in a social studies class, or even two approaches to solving a math problem. So it is important that our students understand how to compare and contrast. I would begin by asking what my students know about comparing and contrasting. Some might know everything about comparing and contrasting, others may not know anything at all. So for this lesson, I'm assuming that my students do not know what comparing and contrasting is, so I need to begin by teaching the concept. And to do that, I have my board, and on it is written the words compare and contrast. And then underneath each word is a definition and then words we use to describe either compare or contrast. So for compare, my definition is how things are the same or alike. And the words we use are same, similar, both, like, in common, as well, also, and the same as, to describe how objects are alike. And then for contrast, I have how things are different or not alike. And the words we use are differ, different, however, but, although, even though, while, and unlike, to describe how objects are not alike. And this would be posted in my room, or I could write it on the whiteboard if I had a whiteboard. And then after I went over the definition, I would give an example. So for my example, I have an apple and a banana. So to compare my apple and banana, they are both fruit. So that's how they are the same. And you can also eat them. So that's another way they are the same. But to contrast them, they are different shapes. They are different colors. Their texture is different. You can eat the skin of an apple, but I wouldn't really recommend eating the skin of a banana, and things like that. So I would really set my example up for my students. After I did my example and I posted my poster board, I would practice with the students as a group. This helps the students bounce ideas off of each other, and it doesn't necessarily isolate one person from the rest of the group, especially if they're struggling. Sometimes being in a group helps them understand the concept a little bit better once they're working it out together. So to practice, we would use some everyday items of a fork and a spoon, and I would ask my students to compare and contrast the fork and the spoon. So I would put them on the table, that way my students can touch them, they can see them, they can feel them, they can really look at them and examine them to figure out how are they alike and how are they different. And I would write on my whiteboard fork and spoon, and then I would write how things are different under each one, and then how they are the same in the middle so that they can see how they are different and the same. You could also do this with a pen and a pencil. They are also good for doing comparing and contrasting. And I can also put these on the table and ask the students, okay, how are they the same and how are they different? You know, pens and pencils, they both write. And you can use them on paper. However, it is not as easy to erase a mistake when you're using a pen as it is with a pencil. And a pencil you can actually sharpen in a sharpener, but a pen just uses ink and sometimes it runs out. So after practicing for a while, I want to make sure that my students understand this concept and really get that comparing is seeing how things are the same and contrasting is seeing how they are different. So I would ask my students to get up and get me two objects from the classroom that we can compare and contrast. And I would hope that the students would bring objects that are similar enough but different that they can compare and contrast. And then I would ask them individually, how is your item the same? Can you compare that item for me? how is it different? Let's contrast those two items and really make sure that my students understand the concept. If they don't understand the concept, we go back over the poster board and go back over those definitions and practice more examples and come up with some examples of our own. We can come up with words. Okay, let's compare and contrast the earth and the moon. Let's compare and contrast our shirts together, like Ryan and Ben's shirts. Let's compare and contrast those shirts. Oh, look, they're the same color. We compare them by seeing what is the same. They are the same color. Oh, let's see what's different. They each have a different design on them. Look, his has Hulk and his has Captain America. So make sure to really include each of these students while we're doing these examples. If my students are understanding this and we're moving through this quickly and they're doing a great job, I made up a game that we can play. So my game is about comparing and contrasting. We start in one corner and they move around the board to the finish. So for this game, we would need our tokens for each student and a dice. And the students would start at the start with their tokens, would roll the dice, and whatever number they come up with, they would count that many squares. And on each square, there is either compare, contrast, or compare and contrast. And so what I would do is once they landed, we would look, oh, you landed on compare and contrast. Okay, so you are going to tell me how these two items are the same and how they are different. And then I would either verbally give them two items out loud, or if they are really struggling with that, I would actually hand them two objects that they can use. Okay, compare and contrast these two balls. Are they the same size? Are they different? I would hope that my students, if we get to this game, would be able to say, okay, they are both red and they both bounce. Or one is bigger than the other one. I'd ask that the students come up with two ways that they are either the same or different or both. And for each way, they get 2 points. So I would give them a little card, and they would keep track of their points. They can either tally or just write the number 2 for however many points they get. They get at least 2 points. Hopefully, they come up with at least one answer before moving on. Or they can get as many points as they want. If they come up with 4 ways that they are the same, then that's great. Then they get those 8 points. After every player's gone and we've moved through the board and hit the finish, I would have them add up their points. If they need help, that's fine. I'd help them add up their points, and the player with the most points wins. To make this therapy project easier, I have these cue cards for students who are really struggling to come up with some of the ways that they are similar. So they're just simple cards. They say the word shape. So how is their shape the same? Is it the same or is it different? What about their size? Are they both the same size, or is one maybe bigger, one smaller? Category, like with the apple and banana, they're both fruits. Do they fall into the same category, or are they in different categories? And color, is the color the same? Is it different? Just to name a few things that can be used. To make this harder, I would pass out note cards, and when we're doing our thing together for the fork and the spoon, I would ask them to write down what they notice is the same. And then on another card, write down what you think is different. And then we go over it together as a group. But that would just make it a little bit more difficult for them. They'd have to come up with some of these concepts on their own. So that's my therapy project.